Whenever I come across a useful photography tip, like something I learned from others in the field, I save them on my phone. Some are so helpful that I try to tell them to as many colleagues as possible. This video contains 10 of the best tips I collected over the years. I'll try to make them as easy I can to understand, covering everything from beginner camera techniques to creativity and composition. If you're learning photography, then these tips should be especially helpful for you along the way. There are countless cameras, lenses and other accessories on the market today, and I do too spend a lot of time researching and reviewing cameras, and it's true that some are better for specific jobs. But nowadays the real takeaway is that pretty much everything today is excellent. The differences are almost always minor, especially at a given price. Use the camera you already have and please don't look back. If you keep switching camera brands, eventually you'll burn a lot of money. Compared to film cameras, the technology has improved massively. Although I tend to dabble into film photography myself to take it as a challenge. It's way more important to use your creative skills and knowledge of camera settings. Focus your efforts on those, not on collecting camera equipment. To me, the most crucial aspect of photography is light. Capturing a photo with good light is a significant step towards achieving a great photograph. But what qualifies as a good light? It's not just about sunsets. The aim is to often balance the light's intensity between your subject and the background. Even with a stunning sunset, the photo can be ruined by a completely dark and silhouetted foreground. The simplest solution is to pay attention to the light's direction and softness. If the light is too harsh, it can create bad shadows on your subject, which can be problematic for portrait photography if you're not going for that contrasty look. If the light comes from an unflattering angle, try adjusting the light source in a studio or move the subject if you're shooting outdoors. Or you can just wait for better light. Additionally, for handheld pictures, please ensure that there's enough light. If not, use a flash or move to a brighter location. The easiest way to get bland, discolored photos is by shooting in poorly lit environments. There are numerous camera settings and it takes time and practice to master them. For beginners, it can be overwhelming, especially the first hours shooting photos. Even experienced photographers don't always get everything right. However, learning to set your camera properly and understanding which settings matter most can greatly improve your chances of capturing the photos that you want. Start by experimenting with camera modes other than full auto. You won't learn much if your camera makes all the decisions for you. It might be confusing initially, but videos on aperture, shutter speed and ISO can give you a solid foundation. These are the three most critical settings in photography. Beyond aperture, shutter speed and ISO, learn to focus correctly by practicing with different autofocus modes. You'll likely prefer single autofocus, which is one-shot autofocus for still subjects and continuous autofocus for moving subjects. For beginners, I'd avoid using manual focus unless it's too dark for autofocus to work. Finally, you should shoot in RAW if you plan to edit your photos or think you might in the future. JPEGs can look good straight out of the camera, especially with Fujifilm, but they don't have that much flexibility for post-processing. If you're unsure, then shoot in RAW plus JPEG and keep the RAW files later just in case. Don't get me wrong, flashes are excellent for adding extra light. Use an external flash, tilt at the ceiling, and choose a relatively long lens, 70mm for example. This works great for events and it's the easiest way to get good results without much expertise. However, flashes can be useful outdoors even in the middle of the day. The concept of fill flash is crucial here. By using a gentle flash, you can eliminate harsh shadows on your subject, often without anyone noticing the flash was used. It might sound weird, but I like to tell people that their camera's built-in flash is more useful on a bright sunny day than in the dark. Except if you're going for that old school point and shoot flash look. You can check out my previous video about that one. It's easy to get stuck in one spot while taking pictures. Avoid this trap. Instead, move your feet as much as possible. Climb on things, change your camera's height, walk forward and backwards, do whatever you need to do, but please keep moving. You can take a dozen photos from the same height and direction without moving your feet or tripod, but guess what? they won't be very different. If your entire catalog is shot from the same height without any experimentation, you're missing out on great photos. Moving around is the only way to change the relative sizes and positions of objects in your photo. You don't like that your subject is too big and the background landscape is too small? Just stand back and zoom in. You want to eliminate a distracting rock? Move around until it's out of your composition or too small to be hindering your image. For street photography, it's key to keep moving, and some pictures are 1 in a million shots. There are some amazing examples out there, so if you want to stand out, you need to get out of your comfort zone. And this brings me to my next topic. The more you experiment with photography, the more interesting it becomes. It's easy to fall into a routine and take similar photos repeatedly, and while there's nothing wrong with that, it's important to try something new as often as possible. Maybe you can go for a street photography tour for the first time, or test out a new lighting technique. You can save reels with photography tips and actually try them for yourself. Be spontaneous and drive to a location you've never photographed before. There are countless ways to experiment in photography, and you won't regret it. Usually, you'll discover something, whether it's a new technique or a personal preference, that you can incorporate in your regular photography for better results. Meeting other photographers is one of the best ways to keep learning and improving, whether for inspiration or advice. You'd be surprised how many people enjoy sharing their tips and techniques with fellow photographers. I never really encountered any gatekeeping when it comes to techniques, or my favorite subject when I'm driving together with a colleague freelancer is discussing pricing strategies for clients. I learn a ton of stuff and knowledge just by driving towards the location with another photographer or videographer. If you prefer self-guided learning in photography, then this still applies. Ask questions on online forums, watch YouTube videos, and save valuable resources that you find. These days we all have a camera in our pockets. Our phone already takes beautiful pictures, but for me it doesn't really work. It just doesn't hit the same compared to when I'm taking pictures with my camera. It's so easy to get distracted, like pulling out your phone to take a picture, but you see other notifications and away goes the moment. Also, when I'm holding a camera in my hand, it's for one purpose only, to take pictures. So when there's a beautiful moment I want to remember, like visiting my family or seeing a beautiful streak of light through the window, I'm always happy I brought my camera with me. Also, sharing those moments with the people who were there, it kind of doubles the joy by sharing those pictures you took with the camera. If you identify yourself as a photographer, even if it's an amateur, a beginner, or a professional, you will appreciate the simple rule to always bring your camera. I have to admit that sometimes I do find it difficult to take a bigger camera with me, but luckily I have my Fujifilm X-E4. This is a very small camera that easily fits into my pockets. If you're interested, I have a review on my channel explaining more about it. If you're planning a shoot, whether it's for your own pleasure or for clients, I'd highly recommend you to prepare yourself as much as possible. Here's what I would suggest that you would look into. Are your batteries fully charged? Do you have enough batteries in the first place? There's nothing worse than having the feeling you're almost out of battery juice while the shoot is still going. Believe me, I've been there more than once. The same goes for my SD cards. Are they fully functional, and did you unload all of the photographs you took on a previous shoot? If you have to format the cards but you're not sure whether you put the pictures on your laptop before, then things can get dangerous. Be sure to have enough storage for the whole shoot. In most of the cases, you can predict how many pictures you're going to take. Also, a good tip is to check which weather it's going to be. If you're planning on shooting a sunset, but it's raining cats and dogs outside, it's just no use that you're going out. If you're shooting for a client, just be sure to communicate all of these things before setting a date. There's no worse feeling than taking headshots outside when it's pouring rain. Check if you need extra lighting. Are you shooting indoors? Is there any natural light? If not, then it might be helpful to bring an extra source of light, whether that's a flash, a strobe light, or continuous light. And then lastly is quite obvious, but make sure you're well rested before a shoot. Some shoots can get very intense and you might miss certain shots because you were tired. Photo processing is something many photographers overlook, but I thought it definitely should be on the list. Even though you cannot save a bad photo in the edit, it can turn a good photo into something truly exceptional. It's easy to overdo when post-processing, so try to maintain as much of the original as possible. Do you remember those orange and teal days from 5 years ago? I was very guilty to this trend, and I still cringe a little bit when looking back to those albums. That is why you should keep your photo as much as it is. I tend to lean towards industry standard programs like Adobe Lightroom or Capture One. A good tip I have is to make one adjustment to the first picture and paste that adjustment to all of the following pictures with the same lighting or location. You'll save a ton of time. You will get better at editing photos over time. Some people are absolute masters in this, but my knowledge is pretty basic. It sometimes even is enough just to make sure that the picture is straight and you can call it a day. One of the easiest ways to take a good photo is to chase beautiful light. That means getting up early, going out late, and generally avoiding the harsh midday sun. Although harsh light can be interesting in some ways if you want a lot of contrast in your photos. It's just so easy to take a good picture in the soft morning or evening light. Photographers often call the hour after sunrise or the hour before sunset the golden hour, because the orange long light can transform the most mundane place into a dreamy location. Even the blue hour light before or after the sun can be very interesting as well. If you're watching this video and you have more tips for beginner photographers, I'm curious what you have learned in your career so far that I didn't mention in this video. If you made it to this point, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see each other in the next one. Bye bye.